Welcome or welcome back to WatchAdvisor on YouTube, where the watches are the stars and watches do have a history. I am in Rome, in the eternal city of Rome, standing in front of the Bulgari main store, the store where the history of Bulgari more or less started. And what we are going to do is to show you where Bulgari took its inspirations, and believe it or not, they launched their first watches in 1919. So I hope that you have time enough to watch the entire video, because this time it is really worth doing it. First of all, we are going to ask you 3 questions end of the video. And if you know to answer them correctly, you are entitled to get one of 3 books, exclusively 3 books. Bulgari just launched a book, a thick one, it's a table book, a heavy book, where they describe their history about watches. This is really something to have, and it is not easy to get because these books, they are sold very quickly. We have 3 of them exclusively for you. If you don't want to answer the question, a second possibility is write us in the comment section your story about Bulgari. What kind of experience you had with Bulgari, either buying a watch, buying jewelry, buying an engagement ring, whatever happened with you and Bulgari, tell us, and we will choose 3 of you, and they will get exclusive that new book that shows the history of watchmaking. Very interesting. The first word goes to the CEO, Jean-Christophe Babin, the CEO of Bulgari.
Good morning.
Welcome. Buongiorno. Ciao.
Buongiorno, Alexander. Such a pleasure to have you in Rome.
The reason why we are in Rome is because you have to know that Bulgari is not doing watches since yesterday. They started in 1919. Next year they are going to celebrate 140 years of Bulgari in total.
As a brand.
It's
Exactly.
incredible. So
it's
if you think, or if you ever thought that these watches just appeared from maybe a marketing decision a couple of years ago, no. And this is the reason why we are in Rome, because we wanted to show you guys every inspiration comes from the eternal city. And if you look back here, we're standing, and you, I think, Jean-Christophe, you are the one to explain us why we are standing.
We are in the heart of the old city, with a commanding view from the Bulgari headquarters to first, the Supreme Court, which is the single largest building in the city. It dates back from the 19th century, but it really embodies, the magnificence of the city. In Rome, since antique times, each and every single monument from Colosseo to this building are huge. And this is very important for the rest of our conversation. Then next to it, you have the Adrian tomb called Castel Sant'Angelo, which also is a huge tomb, by today's standards, or also by antique standards. It was also meant to reflect the power of the emperor who is buried in that tomb. And next, the Vatican, which together with the Pantheon is the single largest cupola in the world. You have 3 monuments from totally different times. We talk about 19th century, about 16th century, about the 2nd century. And what they all have in common is the thread of Rome. This is the magnificence, the grandeur, the size, which eventually is binding the city in a very homogeneous way, despite we have many, many different architectural styles. But those styles have in common to be always gigantic. And for the Bulgari family, it was lots of inspiration taking from their city where they started a business. Of course, because back in the 19th century, for the watches at the turn of the 20th century, there was no internet, there was no TV, there were some newspapers, but basically our master watchmakers, our master jewelers, they knew Rome and little else. And the only kind of external inspiration, they got it from the city. Hence, the Bulgari style, which you find in jewelry as well as in watches, which is very much inspired by some of the most emblematic monuments, by this artistic and architectural environment, which is unique in the world. For instance, Octoroma, which is one of the most iconic line we have in Bulgari, which has been just relaunched. If you see the case band, you see the columns. So immediately, you can imagine.
Colosseo.
It's a temple, it's a temple. It's octagonal because the ceilings of, for instance, the Pantheon were octagonal, not so much because it was decorative, but because the octagon in terms of architecture to old cupola structure is very good geometry in terms of resistance. And de facto, Pantheon has been standing for close to 1900 years. despite earthquakes, despite of fires. And so this has led, obviously, the company to develop a style of its own, applied to jewelry first, because this was the first expertise we developed, and then to watches. The first watches were born as a complement of jewelry. It was logical, they were ladies' watches, and coming in platinum, so only jewelry watches, because basically we were crafting beautiful diamond necklaces, rings, and obviously, logically, the parure was needing also a beautiful platinum watch. And then, evolving, we created something very extraordinary, which is directly coming also from Rome, the Serpenti secret watch. Why it's come from Rome? Because the Serpenti, you could argue, is an animal you can find in many countries, but it's very special here because it was brought to the city 2,060 years ago by mythical queen Cleopatra. She came from Egypt to meet with Julius Caesar, who was his lover. And arriving in Rome, very much welcomed. Immediately, people noticed, especially the one, doing jewelry, that she was wearing bracelets they'd never seen before, which was snake-shaped golden bracelets. They were not watches, of course, because in those times, jewelry. But, they were so amazed by the beauty of those bracelets, because a snake is the only animal which is wrapping around very naturally around a wrist, around a neck. It's the most logical.
If it's not biting you.
If it's biting you, but Cleopatra would be beaten then a couple of decades later. And so they started really to create snakes in Rome. And this tradition has lasted for centuries until the Middle Age. And then, like many things in Middle Age, the tradition was lost until it was revived by the Bulgari brothers, coming in 48 with the first snake-shaped secret watches. So they took the inspiration of those antique times, very Roman, and then they plugged a watch into the mouth and the head of the snake, allowing you to have either a beautiful hydra watch, because when the mouth was closed, you couldn't even imagine that inside there was a very small, tiny mechanical movement. And when you delicately open it, because you got bored, so you wanted to know when you would go back, very discreetly you could open the mouth and have a look, it's time to go. And this tradition then has given birth to many other snakes until today, where the snake is not only a secret watch, but it's also a daily watch with two bogas.
Dress watch, daily watch. Walking around in the city, you see those watches quite often on the wrists.
Actually, of course, Rome is special because it's our birthplace and city, so Romans are particularly attracted by Bulgari. But if I look at the Serpenti watches development, I think that this year, it's not over yet because it's still 3 months to go, but probably when we talk about ladies' watches, it will be in the top 5 worldwide, easily. Which is mind-blowing because, we used until, I would say 20 years ago, to specialize essentially on jewelry watches and on complicated men watches, to also enlarge our expertise to more daily watches. The Serpenti two bogas typically is more a daily watch than a jewelry watch. It looks very, very sophisticated, but it's a daily watch. It's not with diamonds, with whatever. And these watches be really a phenomenon. Yeah. It has started slowly, gained traction, and now it's really the must-have ladies' watch of those years, and we're amazed.
So coming back to the Bulgari Roma, your inspiration also for the redesigning of the new watches actually came also from the city again.
Of course, I was mentioning those ceilings which gave the shape. Obviously, when you look at the shape of this is a tourbillon version with a sapphire.
High end, of course.
Yeah, but it's reasonable because it's a tourbillon. It's 85,000 euro, which for, such a tourbillon is something which is, I would say, quite reasonable, because we know that in the watch industry, prices sometimes are pretty high. So this is, I would say, very reasonable. And it's a very easy to wear watch. It's ultralight.
Sapphire crystal.
Sapphire crystal, even though, it has a certain volume. But this is really emblematic of Rome. And immediately you feel you are wearing a monument of your wrist, on your wrist. So you have a piece of Rome on your wrist with obviously the beautiful heartbeat of the tourbillon.
The Bulgari Roma collection starts, of course, with much simpler watches.
Yeah, with also tempo movement, which is also a house-made movement.
Solo tempo.
Solo tempo.
It's called solo tempo, only time. translated to English?
Hours, minutes, and seconds.
Yeah.
Solo tempo.
Everything you need.
Exactly, everything you need. And this solo tempo has been developed now a bit more than 10 years ago. And is equipping all our men watches, and it's manufactured in Le Sentier movement manufacture, together with the more complicated movements, for instance, this one with the tourbillon, rather than the Westminster carry-ons, which is really, the very, very top of the range with 950 components. Yeah. Maybe we craft 3 to 4 per year, but out of 30 made out of Switzerland every year. So we have quite a big share of the top complications. And it's pretty unique in watchmaking in Switzerland, because usually when you look at the brands, they are either mainstream, meaning by that they are producing beautiful daily watches for men and women alike, more for men, I have to say. Or you have some brands which are only in the very high end with complex watches, mostly for men. And you have some brands specializing in jewelry watches, but hardly ever with complicated movement. Bulgari is covering all 4 segments, because we have typically with Octoroma, with Bulgari Aluminium.
Bulgari Aluminium is the entry price level at a fantastic price, and you get really an iconic watch too. Because if you look at the best on the history of this watch in Italy, it was also something never done before.
It's a legendary watch, because it was very daring, combining rubber with aluminium in a luxury watch, which was really world first and still remains very contemporary. Hence the success of the revival we started during COVID, because it was our first COVID initiative to recreate, momentum on an industry which has been impacted by the COVID. So all those men watches are powered by Bulgari movements. The new Roma coming for the first time with an in-house chronograph movement. We have it already since Tong with Finissimo, but for Roma we have created a more normal, if I may say, automatic chronograph movement, which is a modular movement built on the solo tempo base I was mentioning, but with the chronograph module.
Incredible, these sirens all day long when you are in roads, like if you are in New York. It's incredible.
No, you can't miss it.
Every city has its typical noises, and I think
this is the loudest one.
Yeah, these are
by far.
We are also going to discover the Bulgari main store in Via Condotti this afternoon. So everything started really in this boutique.
Well, actually, Soteriou founded the first outlet in Via Sistina, which is up the Spanish Steps.
Okay.
So 250 meters away, which was both, a laboratory and a store. And then he realized that Via Sistina, because the guy had a lot of acumen, not only for creating jewelry, but also for retailing. He realized very quickly that the traffic was pretty limited in Via Sistina, so he decided to leave the laboratory Via Sistina and open the first store on Via Condotti, more or less across our current store. This was the very first, and this store was the old curiosity store, so he was also daring in the name, because the name was in English. Figure out, we are in Rome, we are in 1884. So obviously, very few people speak in English. The Italians speaking something else.
Or different Italian dialect.
Yeah, that's ever. But the international language in those times also of the embassies was French. And he dared naming his store with an English name, because he had understood that Rome would attract, with modern transportation, which by then was the trains, would attract millions of tourists. And he was right, because Rome today is one of the most touristic cities in the world. So visionary also because the store was operated by him. So not only he created the jewelry, but he sold it directly. So he immediately, created the full integration of the system. And then eventually in 1934, a stroke of genius, from Bulgari with the U, he had the genial idea to substitute it with Latin U, which is a V. And the V is really one of the most incredible, move by a brand, because V, on the one hand, is Latin, so it's back to Bulgari roots, because we're really mirroring and rooted in terms of DNA in the antique Latin world. But at the same time, V is extremely geometric, so contemporary. And all of a sudden, this logo, which was a normal logo, Soteriou Bulgari, became Bulgari with that V. And today, worldwide, you see a B and a V, it's Bulgari. And it says both the past and the future.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
This is really fantastic, I think. I was born looking at my father choosing stone to make things. I saw them being made, being designed, being made, executed, sold, bought it back. I mean...
And today the store obviously is much larger than it used to be. He also installed his laboratory on the upper floors. So the full company was, until 40 years ago, basically in that building. So the ground floor was the store and the upper floors was the factory. And eventually we had, by growing a lot, to move part of it, the high jewelry side of Rome.
And it's too expensive also.
Yeah, but it was more a matter that you just couldn't fuse gold in a purely residential part of the city because it's very dangerous. Yeah. So basically there were some laws also
technical reasons
pushing us at the periphery because, you know, we talk about 1,000 degrees or more, platinum even more than that. So we had to move also for safety reasons. There were no way we would, like Néron, put the city on fire again.
No, not really. Bulgari burning down Rome.
No, that's not a good advertising.
Nice one-time shot advertising.
Yeah, so, would have been one page worldwide one day, and then finished. No more company.
Yeah, no more company. I very much like these behind the scenes stories where we can show you a little bit that it is not an invention of a marketing guy a couple of years ago, as I said in the beginning, but it is really 125 years ago.
A genius, a visionary, you know, we from product, define a style which was different from what the Parisian jewelers. You know, our first global ambassadors were the Hollywood celebrities coming to Cinecittà in the 50s, 60s. Think about Cleopatra movie, I mentioned her, but the movie was produced in Rome. Ben-Hur was produced, so many major Hollywood movies of the 60s were produced in Cinecittà studio, which are about 20 kilometers out of Rome. And obviously in between 2 days of shooting, they were walking not the streets of Rome, but the street of Rome, Via Condotti, and discovered a jewelry style which they had never seen before. Because again, we were a very small local jeweler and watchmaker. And so we were not existing anywhere else other than in Italy and a few holiday destinations of the Bulgari family. And then, thanks to this contact and meeting between Hollywood and Bulgari Via Condotti, we got new clients. Those clients were so happy and proud to wear a jewelry which was different from, let's say, the then dominating French jewelry that went back to the US. They became our best ambassadors because they showed proudly. And not surprisingly, we opened in 72, so 1 decade later, our first foreign boutique in the US because they had paved the ground for desirability and we had a lot of demand coming from Americans who didn't necessarily, you know, took the Super Constellation, which was a long flight then, to come to Via Condotti to buy Bulgari. So we went to them, we started as a peer hotel, and globalization started thanks to those wonderful celebrities like Liz Taylor, Richard Burton, you know, who participated to our success. And he even said that the only word that Liz knew in Italian was Bulgari.
Jean-Christophe, thank you.
Thank you, Alexander.
Very interesting.
I can't wait to see the WatchAdvisor production. It will be another good one.
It will be a good one, and it will be especially for you guys something to discover you probably didn't know. And this is also a little bit what we like to do, show more.
And we love to share it with you in Rome.
Yes.
Thank you, goodbye.
WatchAdvisor in the eternal city of Rome, and I do very much hope that you liked the video and that you were able to a little bit inhale the feeling of what happened in the past when Bulgari started its business. And it's now up to you to please, if you are so kind, to answer 3 questions. As I said in the beginning, you are entitled to get one of the 3 books that have just been released a couple of days ago. If you don't want to answer questions, okay, then I'm also very much keen to read your personal story about you and Bulgari, what happened, what you experienced with Bulgari, engagement, jewelry gift, buying a watch, whatsoever. Write your story in the comment section or answer the following 3 questions. First question will be when did Bulgari start manufacturing watches? Second question, who were manufacturers Bulgari worked with?
in the past. You prominently see these names in the video. And the third question is, who was the couple, the most famous Hollywood couple that, as Jean-Christophe Babin said it in the video, were ambassadors for Bulgari who brought Bulgari to the United States? So 3 easy questions, of course, and or your story about your personal experiences with Bulgari will entitle you to get one of the 3 books. We will take care that you get them in time before Christmas, of course, so it will be probably a nice Christmas gift from our side and from Bulgari. Thanks for watching the video once again, and see you back here on WatchAdvisor very, very soon. Bye-bye.